in my opinion, although I don't like the word polarization because it's overused in these times, I would still say it's the polarization of trust. And what I mean by that is that people are separated into camps. Somebody likes the governing coalitions, somebody likes the opposition parties, and what is the most important thing, they don't like each other. So while previously, some years ago, decades ago, political trust was more kind of rational judgment, and people evaluated how government is performing in terms of policy outputs, in terms of integrity, whether it's corrupted or not, and then they would make the judgment whether it's trustworthy, whether they deserve the people's trust. Currently, what we see is that it's more about emotions, it's about whether people like the politician, and the other ones, vice versa, they don't like the politicians. And this is problematic for various reasons, and one of them is accountability. And that is the core principle of democracy, of democratic society, democratic governance, to be able to judge politicians and governments how they perform, and if they do not perform up to citizens' expectations, then they should be outvoted. However, if as a citizen consider the politician trustworthy based on the fact that you just like him, that he may be funny or he may be acting like your friend, then you lose the ability to evaluate the performance from the rational side. And this is becoming very problematic, and we see it in many countries. We studied how social media affect these processes, and how social media, or what kind of impact social media have on people when they are forming the judgment of trust. And very problematic thing we find is how to even study social media, because it's so broad, and of course we have to differentiate whether people use it for private reasons, to share family photos, for example, or whether they use it for more public reasons, like getting news, expressing opinions, contacting politicians to express their wishes, and so on. So that's one thing. The other problematic thing is that social media is a broad term, but there are many of them, and they are not all alike. So it is very different whether a person uses WhatsApp for messaging, or Facebook for getting news, or, I don't know, TikTok for entertainment. So we had to take this into account. And then I would say the most problematic thing about social media is that even if you narrow it down to, let's say, Facebook, for example, which was up to now the most used social networking site. So even if you narrow it down, your Facebook, your friend's Facebook, and your mother's Facebook will be completely different social media. What you see is heavily customized and personalized than what your friend will see, even if they log in at the same time. And this causes huge problems for researchers because it's very problematic to measure the content. We don't know precisely what people are exposed to when they log in, into their Facebook account. That comes from an experiment we did, and the experiment forced people to make some trade-offs, because if you just ask people if they want politicians to keep their promises, everybody would say yes, of course we want politicians to keep their promises. If they ask them if they want politicians to understand ordinary people, then everybody would say yes, we want politicians to understand people. But then what we did, we forced people to make trade-offs. So imagine one politician. He always keeps his promises, but he doesn't understand people very much. And then you have the other one who understands people very well, but he doesn't always keep his promises. So which one would you choose? Which one would you trust more? And this kind of choices we forced people to do, and we analyzed like tens of thousands of choices people made in this experiment. And then using some statistical techniques, we also connected it to the usage or use of social media. What we found? We found that the more people use social media as a source of information, the more they consider politicians to be authentic and to perform emotionally as important fact. We call it authenticity. Somebody else may call it populist performance or staged performance on social media. But it goes away from rational factors. The more people use social media, the more important they see this authenticity, and the less important they see integrity or competence. So basically, people using social media intensively for information are undergoing this recalibration of what they value, basically, when they have to make a judgment on trust. And this again is very dangerous for the future of democracy, because if people do not value politicians' competency to solve problems, to increase the quality of life standards, if they don't consider it important, politicians, to act with integrity, then they cannot outvote the rascals. If they only value authenticity and how politicians perform on Facebook or TikTok or any other social media, and if this is the only reason they trust them, then it is really problematic to hold them account, to force politicians to act responsibly and basically increase the quality of our lives.